So Dave, you have a show coming up. What do you do to get ready for that?
Well, for me, it's real important to get everything organized ahead of time. So I like putting together an input list. That's probably where I start. And that comes together from talking with, if it's a church thing, probably music directors, sometimes an artist. It just depends. Sometimes you get an input list ahead of time. The next step is sort of taking that and translating it to the console and laying everything out on the console where I want it. Because the thing for me is when I sit down and I mix, I don't want to have to think about, where are the guitars, where are the drum channels. I just want to be able to reach and have it sort of in the right spot. And then it's just pulling the gear I think I'm going to need for it. What microphones do I think I'm going to want to try? Where am I going to want to put them? And just starting to get that stuff set up and having as much ready as possible before musicians show up, because the last thing I want is for musicians to be standing around while I'm looking for a microphone or trying to find the right cable. So I like to get all that information ahead of time so that I can prepare myself.
So Dave, you have the stage set up and you're ready for the musicians. What happens when they get there?
Hopefully I know most of the guys. I'll just kind of walk up on stage and start talking to them, seeing how they're doing, and start putting mics in position. I'm also going to be checking to see what has changed between the time I got everything organized and the time people actually showed up, because sometimes little things change. Sometimes I might need something else. Sometimes there might be something that I had set up that I don't need, so I'll probably clear any of that out. And if there's anything that we still need to go grab, I'll go grab that and set it up.
So do you have any strategies you like to use when you're building a mix?
Yeah, I think something that's real important to me is I try not to get too tunnel vision focused on any one instrument on its own. Whenever I have a console with solo in place, I think there's a temptation to use it a lot and to solo things up and just listen to specific things. And that's not always a bad thing. It can tell you a lot about some things that are going on. But most of the mix decisions I'm going to do, a lot of it, I really want to try and do as much as possible within the context of the overall mix. So I want to try and get everything kind of up and in place, and then I can start going around and EQing things, because then I can EQ more for space versus trying to get things to sound good. To me, it's real important for me to get it right at the source so that I can actually mix and use the tools to get things to fit together versus trying to do a lot of, audio surgery on things just to have them sound listenable. And then the other thing, though, even if you have to do that, sometimes it's better to do it in context of the entire mix, because there might be things that you can sit around and spend 20 minutes on. There's this frequency somewhere, or there's like a ring and a snare drum that you're just trying to get, and you're just sitting there with it soloed up, and you spend 10, 15 minutes trying to get this thing to work, and you've tried EQing it, you've tried, you have like a multi-band compressor or something, and you're just trying to get that out. But in reality, when the whole thing sits together, nobody's going to hear that ring that much, and a little bit of EQ would have ducked it down under everything anyways. So I want to hear, I'm going for an overall song, not for, each individual thing. I want to hear each instrument that's on stage within the mix, although sometimes you have to fudge that around to protect musicians. If I've got a singer up there who's not having a great day, well, the last thing in the world I want to do is, push them out on top so that they're so far and above everything else, everybody's going to know that they're not having a great day. So it's real important for me to have everything in the context of the song as soon as possible to get it all up there together, and then really working to fit it together.
Cool. So you're in the middle of a live performance. What kind of things are going through your head to make sure you stay focused and don't get that tunnel vision?
For me, I really try and keep my eyes on the stage as much as possible. I think it's real easy, especially with the newer digital consoles, and you've just got all these screens and meters and all this stuff around. It's real easy to get distracted down to that. So I really have just been intentional over the last couple of years of trying to ignore that, and I've gotten to a point where I can do it. I think if I knew someone was having a problem with that stuff, I might try and push it out of their field of view so that you can see what's going on stage. It's just so important for me to see what's happening up there, because if all of a sudden something disappears from my mix, I might be able to, if I'd been watching the stage, I might have seen, oh, the guitarist walked too far away and unplugged himself, or the drummer just dropped his sticks. Before I'm just, if I'm just staring at my console, I might start thinking, oh no, something went wrong. It also can give me a lot of cues visually as to stuff that might be happening in a song, especially if it's something that I haven't had a chance to get as familiar with. You can see I can see where a guitarist's hands are. So I can see, oh, it looks like he's going to a solo there, and I can hit that stuff. Ideally, I'm going to know that ahead of time, because it's always better to be prepared. But, in some situations, it's not always, feasible for you to be that prepared for it. So I want to watch the stage, and that just ties back into, again, having everything prepared, having my console so that everything I need to reach is within reach and in a place where I can kind of reach for it almost blindly, or at least at a minimum, I just have to kind of do a glance down. I really just want to watch the band. Another thing that's real important for me is to watch the audience, and I'm looking for a couple of things. Number one, I want to see, are they getting engaged? Are people turning around and giving me dirty looks because they don't like something, or are people covering their ears? That can tell me a lot too about certain things. Is the overall mix too loud? Is it, is there something that's just not happening? But more often than not, it comes down to me being prepared and knowing the songs as much as possible, knowing the arrangements as much as possible ahead of time, and then keeping my eyes on the band so that I can see what's going on that stage. Because ultimately, I really want to follow what they're doing. So it's, that's what the audience is seeing. They're watching the band, so I want to watch them too.
Cool. So you mentioned in there the audience might think it's too loud. How do you deal with volume, and how loud's too loud? Everyone's always wanting to know, how loud do you run it? How do you know when it's too loud?
For me, volume decisions, I always have a place where I kind of think things should be, depending on what do I think an audience is going to go for, and what do I think that style of music should be. But ultimate decisions on audio or on volume, generally I don't see it sort of as my decision to make. I'm not, really the guy at the top of the food chain in most of those situations. There's a producer or a director or a manager or a pastor or somebody above me, and at the end of the day, they're kind of who I'm really working for. So those kinds of decisions, it's something I'll weigh in on, definitely, especially if it's something that I don't necessarily agree with. But ultimately, I want to get on the same page of what they want to do with it and kind of mix to that volume. I like it loud, but, for me, a lot of the stuff where people think it's too loud, it turns into more of a spectral balance. If you've got a really good PA and a really good band, you put up a decent mix that is, spectrally, frequencies are all good. There's nothing really bad sticking out. You can usually turn those up pretty loud, and it's not nearly as offensive as if you've got lousy musicians and lousy gear and things not set up right, that's the stuff that tends to make people head for the doors, I think, first. If you get everything right to begin with, most of the time you can turn it up pretty loud. I think a lot of the people who complain about things being loud, they would be really surprised at how loud a symphony orchestra is. If you go listen to it down at Orchestra Hall somewhere, if you've got a great symphony, I mean, those can get pretty loud, but the way things are arranged and set up, and you have professional players, it's more balanced tonally for what you're listening to. And if things are sounding good and even, you can get things pretty loud, I think, before people start getting mad. A lot of times when people say something's too loud, a lot of times it's just, they just don't like the style of music. And that's just something you can kind of learn over experience. If you're getting complaints from people, you can start learning that, hey, this is, you know, I'm doing a loud rock song that needs to be loud for what it is, and you've got an audience member who's just, they don't like that kind of stuff. They like soft and, you know, intimate, maybe ballad kind of stuff, or, you know, older music. They don't like the modern, edgy kind of stuff. And sometimes they don't know how to explain, hey, I don't like this, and what they say is, it's too loud.
So do you have any just general advice when it comes to audio world and mixing and everything that goes along with it?
I think it's really easy for guys to get sort of focused on specific gear, and everybody gets real crazy about numbers and this frequency or that, and cutting 7 dB of 315, or, you know, and I just think you've got to be careful to not get too sucked into the tech side and too hung up on specific pieces of equipment, because if you do audio long enough, you'll get in enough situations where you don't always have the stuff that you really like and that you really want. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to that song. That's what people are going to go home singing and humming, and they don't care, you know, whether you had this compressor or this specific microphone. They just care that it sounds good. So you kind of have to do the best you can with what you've got, and really focus on listening, and not, you know, whether I'm doing, you know, 3 dB of compression or 12 dB of compression. What sounds good? What works for that song? What works for that day, for that band in that room? And do what you've got to do for that to make it sound good. And don't get hung up on a lot of little things, because it's real easy to do that.
Cool. If there was one thing that you could leave us with, what would that be?
I just say listen to a lot of different stuff. Listen to lots of different styles of music. Listen to stuff you love, and listen to stuff you hate. And you don't even sit around analyzing it. Just listen to a lot of it and put a lot of that stuff in your head. Go to movies and listen to the soundtracks in the theater, and, you know, just really, you know, fill your head with lots of exposure to a lot of different things. Because if you can get that in your head, it'll give you a reference point for when you actually sit down and are mixing for other people to listen to. Because ultimately, that's what their reference point is. It's, you know, what did they watch on TV last night? You know, what's on the radio right now? That's where people are coming from. That, to me, is what they're expecting to hear. So listen to a lot of different stuff.
Great. Thanks.